Thanks a lot for attending the session. We've got a stalwart, Mr. V Kamath, who frankly doesn't need any introduction. And we are very happy to have him with us, basically talking about India's journey towards Viksit Bharat, the transformation that is happening in the country on the financial services side. And I can tell you a personal incident that I had with Mr. Kamath probably 20 years back. And I actually visited him and I was talking to him about the changes that is happening in the banking landscape. This is at the time when ICICI Limited merged with ICICI Bank to become the ICICI Bank. And he actually told me that the future of the banking is going to be in the mobile phone. And for people who know about early 2000, we used to have only feature phone. There was nothing called a smartphone. And I was coming out thinking to myself that, is it going to be true? And fast forward 20 years, and it is actually a reality, right? Pretty much everything that we do in terms of financial services transactions is all happening in the phone. So the reason why I'm talking about this is because he actually saw that 20 years back in terms of what's going to be happening in the world. And frankly, we are living through the dreams that, he talked about. So the idea for the next 30 minutes is, financial services plays a very, very important role in terms of the development of the economy. And our Prime Minister has set in a very ambitious goal of putting $25 trillion for India's GDP by 2047, where we're actually going to become a developed nation and will be amongst the top three globally as per GDP. The financial services industry also is very important because that basically brings in social inclusion. We talk about poverty, we talk about everything else that haunts the country. But this is one industry which is actually going to be helping lifting people from where they are into the next level. And we have already seen that happening. And if the economy has to grow from where it is today to $25 trillion in the next 20 odd years, which means that, we are talking about a GDP growth rate of around 7 to 8%. And it's quite natural that, the financial services sector has to grow 2x of that growth rate. So I just wanted to ask you in terms of your thoughts on 2 or 3 aspects where the sector has to evolve significantly to support India's economic growth from where it is to the next level. And I think we are all very fortunate to be in the country today because if you look at it, on the political side, we have a stable government which is running its third term, and which is very, very unique because if you look at most other parts of the world, I think they are all going through a massive amount of instability. So we have a stable government. There is a policy continuity that we are seeing in the country, which is actually very positive. And if you look at the demographics, I think it's a very young country, average age between 26 and 28 years, quite technically literate, which again is the reason why it's been such a big success, the GFF, and we were just talking about it. And if I compare this to Singapore or Cybos or any other event, I think we are doing a phenomenal job. And this is the 6th edition of GFF compared to multi-years that some of the other countries have been doing. Increasing per capita income, which means that there is going to be more and more consumption and use of financial instruments that is going to be playing. And then if you look at the macros, despite a little bit of headwinds that we are seeing in the last maybe a quarter or so, I think we have stable inflation, we have a huge foreign currency reserve, and the growth rate continues to be pretty strong at around 7.5%. So the platform is set for us to move from where we are to the next level that the government is talking about. And we would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree with the backdrop that you given. And let me add a few other indicators based on what we have seen elsewhere as we go along. So to me, the runway is the first thing that you look at. How long is your runway? And we have set ourselves a 25-year runway. The next question to ask is that runway, does it exist? It clearly exists. If you look around you at what needs to be done, that's the question I ask myself. Whether it is start with urban rejuvenation, start with village rejuvenation, start with all elements of infrastructure that you need to have in a developed country, a Viksit country. And you find that probably the only area where we are, there, in the sense we have reached where we need to be, is in communication, telecommunications, in terms of reach, spread, and the cost at which we operate. In all other areas, we are short. So there is a huge investment opportunity and a growth opportunity, which then translates to GDP. This is one. The second is an aspirational, I think, people. We have young people, as you rightly said, who are the aspirants and who are the consumers. So they will consume. Third is really avenues to drive beyond infrastructure. Typically, it used to be what is broadly called services, but we can break down our services. Of course, there's manufacturing services, and so on. You look at 25 years back, services was basically the IT industry and everything that came out of the IT industry. But today it has evolved to what I would call more of knowledge industries. Even if you look at one metric there, global companies would have their IT outfit in India. It is no longer IT outfit. It is Global Capability Center. The people they employ in the Global Capability Center are a different lot of people from what would be there in their IT back office, as it were. So we are, in a way, leveraging on our knowledge economy. We are leveraging on the youth of the country. And we are also leveraging on what I call the entrepreneurial spirit of the young people. Now, what is it? Last count, maybe 150, 200,000 startups in the digitech space. Fintech, 10 to 15,000 startups. And the startups keep increasing. I'll put one other data point here to indicate the sort of pace at which we are growing. I was at this same function last year. And of course, the front-end people are all there. But what is the distinctive change that has happened in 1 year? The distinctive change is this whole talk about AI and agentic and so on. If you look at the number of agentic applications that are out there, end use, people who have thought through and come up with an agentic application for a financial services business that we are in, is quite a number of people who have already there. So we are not sitting where we were, we are evolving as we go along. And this we see in every single area. And to me, in one line, the runway exists, the people exist, opportunities exist. And we have what used to be a problem earlier, a twin balance sheet problem. The banking balance sheet is corrupted in the sense that it is not strong enough. And the corporate balance sheet also is not strong enough. Today, the twin balance sheet problem has been elevated. So you have ability to invest. So to me, I think the sort of growth numbers that we're talking of, and the target is easily doable.
No, thanks a lot for that. And you talked about the AI and agentic that is revolutionizing the financial services space, and we'll come to that in a moment. One other point that I just wanted to talk about is the role of foreign capital. Because if you look at India's investment plan from a government perspective, we are talking about upwards of $3 trillion to be invested over the next 5, 7, 10 years. That's a lot of money. And if you look at the domestic savings that we are seeing in the country, that's probably not enough to take care of that investment. So there is going to be a dependence on foreign capital, both from an FDI perspective as well as from a portfolio perspective. Now, in the last 6+ months, we are seeing that countries are becoming highly centric towards their own requirements for a variety of reasons, right? And therefore, how do you see this playing out in terms of India's ability to attract foreign capital and continue to be one of the largest FDI countries in the world?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. And anyway, I have lived through this for a long period of time. We never were great at attracting foreign capital. And whatever has happened despite that. And during very tough times, as it were. So foreign capital will come in. I think it will come in through 3 ways. One is through the capital markets as investment, through FDI, and through long-term funding in foreign currency. These are the 3 typical avenues that you will see. But you are also seeing something interesting. Instead of foreign capital coming in, you see global companies now listing in India and taking that loan to growth. So I don't think it is just foreign capital coming in, because I have not seen tons of foreign capital come in over my career of 55 years. So it happens, but so what I'm trying to say is that we have not been an economy driven by foreign capital. So let me answer then, so where is capital coming from and how are you meeting your needs? So let's take a very simple thing. Let's take the highway program. Till 2 years back, 3 years back, the highway program had to be funded primarily through the government budget. Because you tried public-private partnerships. For a variety of reasons, it didn't succeed. The main reason was there are issues around land acquisition and various other things. So the government implemented. But in the last 5 years, if you look at, take NHAI, I think it's a sterling example of what can be done. All the highways are making money. They're tolled properly. The FASTag was implemented. And look at how technology weaves in. So the tolling is automatic. And then, NHAI, based on that, the track record and the collection record, is able to create an InvIT and offload their what they would have otherwise borrowed, the asset into the InvIT and repay what they have borrowed. And the cycle, a virtuous cycle has been created. Now that's happening in green power in particular, again, now that is happening. So these are areas which we did not think existed, which are now getting in. The second problem in India over till again very recently was long-term savings were not flowing into investment. So you did not have, I would say, insurance industry or the pension industry or the mutual fund industry of a size which could fund your long-term needs. That has now changed. So, and this is a 20-year effort, but now visible. You can see corporates basically are going into the corporate bond market rather than the bank funding market. Infrastructure companies still 3 years back were still going to the banks, today going to the corporate bond market. As I said, I already quoted NHAI. Private companies are also creating InvITs. So there's a diversification of funds that is happening. So foreign capital will come in, I would say, just as a filler. Foreign capital will not be the foundation on which we will grow. And as your GDP grows, this becomes a I would say, you'll meet your needs through your own internal thing. So I'm not so worried about foreign capital. Foreign capital will come in when they see merit and they see a return and they want to invest in this market, they'll come in, which is fine.
And as we all know, yesterday there was 2 big inaugurations that happened in Mumbai, the Navi Mumbai International Airport and also the metro line connecting South Bombay to North Bombay. Majority of it is actually funded through domestic capital.
Yeah, so if you look at the metro lines are very long gestation thing. So you may need some foundational support from a very long-term lender. So I think that will need to be accessed as we go along. And there are enough multilateral and bilateral sources from abroad to do that. Because these probably are not private market funding opportunities. Because it is the gestation is so long that it doesn't work for this. So there is a combination of ways in which this will happen, but I don't think we are going to be starved for capital.
Let's move to the digital ecosystem that we are all talking about, right? Now, data penetration through widespread mobile internet access has been a transformative force in accelerating financial inclusion in India. The open architecture that the government created, and with the help of NPCI, they basically democratized the entire financial inclusion through innovation, solutions, and faster adoption. Now, in the last 15 years, we have seen a leapfrog growth in adoption of various digital technologies in the country. Now, in the last at least 2 to 3 years, the AI and ML, which is artificial intelligence and machine learning, is becoming actually impacting our day-to-day life in many, many ways. And the disruption to the financial services industry and the inherent benefit through, again, wider access and faster access to customers, as well as better credit decisioning and risk management technologies. So how do you see this going to be the next big change that is going to impact the financial services sector more from an acceptability, adaptability, and risk management?
Yeah, there are several other issues also that will have to be factored in here. I'll touch upon these things. And a question that is often asked is, who will survive in this evolution that will happen? So we'll talk about that also. I think when you look at any technology, the first question to ask is the consumer ready to use it? That question is a non-question in India as of now. I remember when we rolled out the first ATMs, there were 30 ATMs in the country. And we said we will roll out 1,000 ATMs. Actually, we saw a small experiment done by Citibank in the late 90s of putting 14 ATMs in a city with 1 branch And we saw that it was a success. We were closely tracking Citi. And then Citi said, somehow we don't want to go ahead with this. So we said, we will run with this because we didn't have money to experiment, but we have now money to put in. But internally in the bank, nobody bought it. None of my colleagues bought it. They said, nobody in India will use an ATM. This is circa 2000. So we said, we'll roll out 1,000 ATMs because there are no branches. And within the first week, we had lines of 1,500 people withdrawing money all through the day. So clearly, the Indian consumer is ahead of what we think the consumer is ready for. And I think that I've seen over the last 25 years continue. So the consumer is going to accept anything that is a convenience to the customer. And that is the premise on which the young people who are building the fintechs of tomorrow are working on. And I think I wish them great luck because the end user will certainly follow. So not a problem. And here, as I was saying, I had not expected the sort of work done, which is now presented here, to have been done in the last 1 year. It's basically, we're talking of agentic applications, whereas most elsewhere we are just talking of rudimentary things. Here, actual applications are being showcased. So you have an ecosystem where there are people creating based on new technology, and there are, of course, users who are ever ready to look at and absorb this. So I said I'll also talk about the other question which I am asked. Maybe you would have asked it later on, but I'll answer it now. So I was asked a question. I was doing a media interview just before I came in. The question was that, should banks invest more in technology? I said banks don't need to invest more in technology. They need to invest less in technology, but they need to invest it where it is needed. So you are investing in your own, furthering your legacy version from 1 to 1.2 to 1.4 to 2. That doesn't work. You will have to revamp what you have entirely and put in new things which probably cost a fraction of what you are running at today. But that you need to have the ability to take that risk. There's always a risk in migration. But without that, I think we'll live through exciting times. But the good news is that there are all these young companies ready to take whatever space is available to them.
That was actually my next question in terms of what's the investment and how this is going to be from an ROE perspective. But you answered that.
Yeah.
So, moving on to the point that you've spent 5 years in China, and when you talk about AI and adoption of AI, there are 3-4 countries that really come out. One is US, which has always been the mother of invention. China has done some remarkable work in terms of and they really don't talk or advertise too much about it. And you and I were talking about it just a short while back on that. And then there are countries like Korea, Taiwan, and even to some extent Israel, right? Now, India has been a little late into the journey. But then the good thing is we can learn from experiences and pitfalls that other countries have seen as they went through the journey of AI. Now, how do you see this? How do you compare India to China in terms of the overall AI adoption, and what are the few ththings that India needs to be careful on?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question to look at in a developmental context. I've in a way come to learn over a long period of time that I used to worry that we are late to the party, but sometimes being late to the party is good because in this case. You are able to do things at a fraction of the cost that if you are an early entrant, you would. You start looking at, we could not afford a mainframe, we leapfrogged. We could run technology at 1/10 the cost. I'm talking of banks. It's circa 1990s, late 1990s. Then you had solar energy come in, where we were funding solar plants, but it didn't take off. Good that it didn't take off because the cost per unit of power was rupees 20 then. So not tenable, not workable. Then you had the big use case of data, telephony and data. Late to the party, but in 2015 when you hit the market with at a cost which any common man could afford, and you could scale that quickly. And then my 5 years in China, 2015, 2020, you were seeing virtually a cashless society where everything was through either WeChat Pay or Alipay, and you used your phone for everything. And I used to wonder, I know, will this, how long will it take us to get there? But I had no knowledge then that the Reserve Bank had opened sandboxes, was encouraging innovation and so on. So in 2020, when COVID hit us, we were ready with solutions which could scale up very quickly. So the sandbox had provided you a path to actually commercial utilization. And I see the Reserve Bank playing this very supportive role even today in allowing more and more sandboxes to come in. In fact, they're saying that, why don't you come with even more so that we can look at it, and then that becomes part of the base case or the use case as we go along. So as long as you have, I think, a supportive environment, technology adoption will happen, as I see. And there is no rush to be first in the queue. That I'm very clear, because you will pay something exorbitant, which at this stage we probably can't afford, and we should not afford, because it's, to me, wasteful expenditure. So at the right time, we will scale this up as appropriate.
And any thoughts in terms of your experience in China on AI, best cases, usage, etc., that India can actually leapfrog today, both in financial services sector and otherwise?
Yeah, I think till 2020, the use of AI was limited. AI, I would think that what we started doing in 22, 23 is what they had started doing probably in 2014. So there was a 6-year lead time, but by 21, 22, we had caught up with that. Thereafter, of course, they have worked very hard on use cases in AI, which were not commercialized, but have been commercialized as they have gone on. And that is obvious. We can see it when you look at, let's take telephony, the type of phones that come out from there, and the application engineering that has gone into that, and so on. So there has been a steady, I would say, investment by all major companies in that area, and that is there for us to see. But there again, interestingly, if you look at banking, the innovation is led by fintechs, not by the banks per se. So the fintechs provide a wrap to the WRAP, to the banks to do business. And they are, in most cases, doing things in parallel. So just to put in context, there is a digital bank. Some of you or most of you may have heard of it. I won't name it. 400 million customers operating with 4,000 people. So it's a digital bank. So this is what competition could be tomorrow if things open up and decided that we need to bring in a new set of competition to shake up. So this has happened. So we'll see where things go.
As you are responding, you touched upon 2 points that is going to be my next 2 questions. One is on regulators and the other is on reskilling, because these are going to be very critical. Reskilling. Because when you talked about 400 million customers with 4,000 people, that means that you have to be amongst the 4,000, and you need to have a different skill set to survive in that environment. But I'll come to that in the next case. Now, regulators have a very interesting job, because they need to balance in terms of driving innovation as well as protecting customers and the financial stability of the country. Now, RBI has been a very proactive regulator. They have developed a free AI, which is basically a framework for responsible and ethical enablement of AI as a foundation for AI adoption. And they are very open in terms of creating sandboxes and asking for people to come and tell them in terms of what works and what doesn't work. Now, your thoughts on regulators' job ahead as AI becomes more prevalent in the financial services sector?
As you said, and what I saw, the sandbox was a path-breaking thing, and they've continued with this. And I think the recent policies that have been announced again take the path forward. I think they allow a bank to fully use its capital and fully use its funding profile to keep business on a very healthy equilibrium, as it were. Otherwise, it was getting a little skewed towards retail, but now it's back to. So in the regulatory context, the entire, I would say, regulatory framework in India has been completely in sync with the times. So that is not a challenge. To the other question?
And how do you compare the Indian regulatory environment in terms of some of those new technology and new intermediation that is coming in the financial services sectors compared to, say, China or US or any of the other markets?
I think we are ahead of the curve in comparison to most regulators, except maybe very long back, even the Scandinavian regulators were ahead and more open in terms of digital, when digital was not even a known phrase. But elsewhere, I think we are certainly now at par with maybe 2 or 3 countries which are at the forefront.
That's interesting. You talked about the changing requirement from a skill perspective for financial services people. And a lot of the people in this room and even otherwise are directly or indirectly related to the financial services sector. You also mentioned that, technology needs to be very different. You just cannot use the mainframe and keep changing it to version 1, version 2, et cetera, et cetera. Now, from a people perspective, what are the few things that, you think about as more and more new technology comes in and the adaptability becomes very different? How do you think the skilling needs to be? And what are the few things that the financial services people should be looking at?
See, the good news here is that things don't change overnight. They change over a period of time. So you have enough time to do what is right. And we had seen this going back 2000. There weren't enough people to put in the bank branch who could operate a computer. So you had to start by training people on that. And there were back-end systems, like we worked with NIIT to train people. We gave them the material and they trained people to get on this one. Then we didn't have senior people. We tied up with the Manipal University to put in people, to train people over a 1-year program to come in at senior levels into the branch. So getting skills put into workforce is not difficult in India. If the set of people were not, we didn't have a large number of 26, 27 years old, as you mentioned right at the beginning, it would have been a different story. But we are blessed with that as capital. That is our human capital. So that is not a challenge. So there are 2 sides to that problem. Skilling new people who have to come in. So these people that will come in will probably have a technology background. And there will be probably a whole lot of people at the back end doing other things. May not be directly in the bank, but providing support services for the technologies that you run. Again, if I look at the 2000 example, over 30 seconds, we first said the branch will not do bookkeeping and keeping account. That will be a back office. So the branch became a service center. And the back office, you would hire 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 people to do processing. Then within 5 years, everything became straight through. So we said we go ahead with straight through. The back office people were redeployed in other businesses. So I think this is going to be, so there has been in the banking business continuous reskilling. This is maybe of a slightly different order, but I'm sure given our experience, we will go through it.
Yeah, the talk about GCCs is something that is very common, right?
Because I mentioned that, I think, earlier.
Yeah, that's right. I think we are just a minute and a half. Your closing remarks in terms of your advice to the financial services professionals in the changing landscape and the stuff that you have gone through in your life in terms of adoption of technology and from where India was primarily in terms of nuts and bolts to where we are today. What are the few things that we need to think about and keep in mind?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I have to keep in mind is my optimism. I will keep my optimism to a very high level because I clearly see a 25-year growth horizon, and most of the people here will go through that horizon, meeting their aspirations. So that to me is a very important part of it. Second is, I think we have a very stable run, whether it is business, whether it is governance, whether it is regulation or the government itself. So that provides us, again, a huge opportunity to grow on where we are. And the foundation is already built and growing at around about 7%. I don't want to say 6.8, around about 7%, I think gives you the momentum that you want to do. And the foundation is strong. I think we just have to go the course. And I'm sure the young people will ride the course. They'll also evolve. They'll also figure out how to make sure that you land on your feet. And that's what will lead to success. Thank you.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned earlier, India is actually the third largest country in terms of the startup ecosystem behind the US and China. And if you look at today, we have got more than 100 billion-dollar startups which are in different stages of evolution. And with the opportunity and the runway that you talked about in terms of the consumption story, young population, etc., certainly there is only going to be positivity from where we are today. And technology is actually going to be an enabler to fast track some of these developments.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, the audience.
So much to our dignitaries on the dais. May I request you to please come forward for a group photograph, please. And thank you so much. I think it's always an honor and a pleasure to hear from the industry stalwarts and every single time. So thank you so much for joining us at GFF 2025. Thank you, sir. Thank you.